Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Parenting Hour. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5 here in the West Midlands and 105.1 if you're tuned into us on Inspire FM. Welcome to this evening's show. We're here on St. Valentine's Day, or Valentine's Day as it's more known nowadays because it seems to be more of a commercial day than a religious day, although it started off with the celebration of St. Valentine back in, I think, the 3rd century. There's a lot of history around it. But these days, it seems to be one of the days that is commercialized, and people talk a lot about love and marriage and romance as if this is the only day of the year that it happens, not the other 364 days that we should be thinking of these things as well. I've got an expert with me this evening in marriage relationships, and she's often here talking about married relationships, about love, about intimacy, about infatuation. And we're trying to unpick Valentine's Day as known for our listeners here this evening to be able to understand what should we be doing, not just today, but the other 364 days in the year as well, and how we can incorporate more generosity or forgiveness or compassion or mercy or all those other words that could mean love as well. So that is kind of my little introduction to Abeda. Welcome, Abeda, this evening. I know Abeda is well known here as a very senior counselor, trainer, expert in counseling many different fields, including psychosexual relationships, etc. Abeda, welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair. As always, it's such a privilege and honor to sit across you and speak to you. Jazakallah khair, Kathleen. And thank you for that lovely introduction. Jazakallah khair. And it's definitely, for me, it's an exciting topic. Not just because for tomorrow, but generally because I really value the concept of love. Although I must say that in my understanding and my experience, love is something very different. As you rightly said, it's just not the romantic version, but love has many shades and many facets. And I think we need to learn to appreciate all of them. And we'll unpick, as you rightly said, rather than just focusing on the romantic aspect, which is now so commercialized, which becomes very problematic. I think in my clinical practice, see a lot of issues, a lot of heartache, because of the fact that people either cannot find that version of love which is sold through media, but also the fact that it's unsustainable. Really, you might start off with that, but then it doesn't sustain, which generates a lot of heartache. So I think to save love, we have to redefine love. Inshallah, that's what I think we need to do.
Well, I'm looking forward to redefining love this evening, indeed, and with you and trying to unpick things, because this commercialism that's happening at the moment is reaching young people. It's reaching primary school children. Be my Valentine. You know, things like this are coming into schools very earlier on and getting children looking and thinking about this. But we want to look at that sustainable love within a marriage, within that relationship, within a long-standing relationship. So how can we redefine love, or where would we start even to redefine love?
I suppose this whole thing about thinking that the feelings. So when somebody says they are fallen in love, so this whole concept of falling for something, falling is really, if you think about you and me falling, it's like, oh my God, you stumble on something and you've fallen flat on your face and you've lost agency, respect, dignity, a lot of things you lose. You're not yourself, you're not in control. So I suppose a healthy way of looking at love is that we walk into love sensibly, knowing what we're doing. And when we walk into love, it's more about commitment, choice, agency, making a firm choice and knowing what we're doing rather than just stumbling and just falling. So I suppose it's just the language is very important. And then kind of thinking that when we talk about love as opposed to infatuation, especially for young people, and as you said, young people kind of celebrating and connecting. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Muslims, we know that Allah has given us these feelings and emotions. So when we connect with somebody else, the opposite gender, mostly what happens is that there are endorphins in the brain, or serotonin, all these chemical reactions, which we feel like we really want to be with the other person. But that's really, if you don't put that in context, then there is, in isolation, you cannot sustain that level because it fizzles away and goes away. So, but the wholesome version of love is with so many other things. So I think for young people to understand that they have to, we have to give them an understanding insight that they will have those feelings, and it's okay to feel something, but then just running away blindly, as they say, love is blind and lovers can't see. I mean, I just feel that this whole notion of love, I mean, historically, if you look at the history, at some point, I think in the late 18th, 19th century, when poets like Keats, I must admit, when I used to be young and used to read Keats, it was definitely very romantic. But then you think, you're pining away and you can't breathe, and your life is just about that. It's just very consuming, isn't it? You have to become ill to just and it's not healthy, is it? Is it just me, Kathleen, or are you feeling the same feeling that it just feels like it takes away something from you?
In a way, and I'm thinking back now of my younger days, reading some stories like this and reading those books, and I can't even remember what they were now, the name of these books at the top of my head, but all around love, and it's all around relationship, and there's so many of them. They're from the traditional, as you said, stories, poems, into modern day books and films now that a lot of young people are drawn into, as if this is what love looks like. This is what a marriage looks like. This is how people should behave in this way. And it is definitely, when you look at it as a mature adult, it's totally different. They're talking about a fantasy made up world of people, and then, like, as if the roses kind of passed, or the hearts mix from one to the other, goes across in the air, and they're once you find this person and fall in love with this person, then the rest of the world is moves away, and you're living on fresh air and water. And we know this is not happening. This is not reality.
And I suppose it's not being, I definitely wouldn't say that we are being cynical in any way, or we just kind of being negative about the whole concept. I just feel that it's not, in isolation, it's not wholesome. So unless we recognize that if we put so much pressure on that one relationship, and we want that person to be our soulmate and our best friend and our co-parent and our everything, we should share the same hobbies and same passion, everything. It's just not sustainable, really. Whereas and like I said, in my understanding, this way of loving somebody, or this notion of romanticism, is very Western. Whereas the Eastern concept, or the Islamic concept, is more that you don't fall in love first, you fall in love afterwards. And that's the Islamic concept, and it puts young people in a impossible situation, because they want to fall in love with somebody first, get to know, and then get married. Whereas Islamically, there is no room for that as such. Like, you really experience all that and then you marry somebody. So for us Muslims, I think it's really important to redefine it in a way that it's in line with our understanding, and it doesn't take anything away. So love will happen, definitely, and love should happen. There's no marriage, there should be no marriage without love. But love, the way we see love, has to be, like you said, wholesome, which is about responsibility. It's about understanding, respect, connection, communication, roles, looking after each other, so many other things, rather than just infatuation, which is just a sexual chemistry, or just want to be consumed completely by the other person, which I suppose is again I don't know. I think it's a problematic thing for young people. And then when they can't sustain that, because obviously in my work, I work with a lot of couples where they feel that they have lost that connection. Now, when we lose that connection, unless we realize that that connection is never sustainable anyway, it's something that you keep working at, and it looks different at different stages in your marriage or your relationship. So how you were in the first few years is going to be very different to how you are going to be in the middle 10 years or whatever, and when you have young children, or when a woman comes through a menopause or whatnot. So if we don't have a realistic understanding of expectations, then we're going to feel like a failure. And then we're going to come away from a completely fixable relationship, and we're going to give up on it because we worry that it's not right for us somehow. So I also think that as Muslims, not just Muslims, as diverse communities, we need to give our own meaning to our things rather than take what's prevailingly out there from social media or media generally.
Definitely. And we can see that with different events in the calendar, it is very commercialized now. Things are becoming very commercialized, and our Muslims, our families and individuals are adopting some of these. I mean, some are really good. I mean, it's nice having something, I suppose, like we had a couple of weeks ago, Gratitude Day, just to say and remind us that we should be grateful every day and comment and give compliments every day. Maybe it's nice as a reminder for having this Valentine's Day that we look after each other more. Maybe some people need that. However, as you mentioned, this should be integrated every day into the marriage. And love doesn't mean, I think, you can correct me, a bunch of flowers. I mean, love can mean many things. It can mean unpacking the dishwasher. It can mean, changing the baby's nappy. That is love. That is, you're not able to do something for yourself, but able to give of yourself, give some time of yourself, give something of yourself. It can be putting in a little secret message into your partner's suitcase if they're traveling, a little letter in there, a little poem in there to remember them. Is that right?
That's so true. And I think that's the concept we try, and when we do psychoeducation, kind of really thinking about how do you know your better half in a deeper way, based on their upbringing, who they are as people. Because don't forget, two individuals, when they come together, they're very different as people. So their way of expression is going to be very different. So this concept of love language, although is very, very important, but then again, if we're going to be fixated with those core 5 love languages, I think that is also a problem. Anything that becomes prescriptive, we feel like now we need to fit in one of these boxes. It doesn't work like that, because that is that comes from that person's understanding. And a lot of these things, a lot of the research that we get comes from predominantly the Western world. So we try, and one size does not fit all. So you're absolutely right. Now, these days, the popular notion of romance and love is chocolates, flowers, candlelit dinner, those kind of things. And I was reading a stand-up comedian was saying something like yesterday. She was saying, "Oh, we didn't come all the way from India to sit in candlelights. We came from electricity, so we're not going to make a big fuss about candles because we like electricity more than candles." So I think it's just recognizing that these things are nuanced in a way, and it's okay if that's not your thing, really. Just to fit in, we don't have to embrace these things. And you're absolutely right. We come from the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ where he told us that we need consistent small actions every single day. So love has to be manifested in so many different ways. And you, mashallah, gave such beautiful examples of validating the other person through, like you said, notes or saying something nice or text messages or whatever. And when Kathleen, you and I know both, when we put so much pressure on that one day, one annual holiday, or that one family meal or whatever, something always goes wrong, doesn't it? So I think this whole pressure on making one day special is problematic psychologically anyway, because your nerves don't work and you just think, oh my God, it's now or never. It's all or nothing. So I think we have to take it easy and be realistic and find different ways and be creative rather than box this into one special day.
Excellent indeed, as a foundation for our program. And I'm wondering, just what would our religion inform us on this? What does our religion, our Quran or Hadith, what examples do we have there that we can use for our examples as Muslims that are listening into this evening's show indeed about this? And rather than using the examples we have on the media, on the commercialized examples that has come mainly from the West, to be able to sell things, because you can see the shops are full of these items to sell, because this is a time of year that they can make another revenue in, and a lot of people do buy these things, but what should we be looking at first as a foundation? There's no harm in them. I'm not saying that there is harm in it, because sometimes it is nice having a bunch of roses and things like this. It is nice. I like chocolates myself, so if anybody brings me chocolates, I will not refuse them. But what going back to our faith first, what do we need there first to look at?
Yeah, so the Islamic concept of love is interesting. SubhanAllah, it's very wholesome, and that's what I think we need to have a holistic understanding of love. So the Islamic concept of thinking about love and mercy together, and I find that so useful. So if you unpick just the word in the Arabic word and the Urdu word are quite similar. So when we say huba or muhabba or muadda, so the root word huba, which literally means like a seed. So a seed that every person has, if you really think about the concept of seed, it grows, right? So, and seed is not just, you have to invest in that seed and you have to work hard for it to grow, and you realize that the more you nurture it, the more it grows, and it just happen. So this whole concept of, and I think if you really look at the way West has sold this whole thing, somehow romance, if you think about romantic stuff, 18th, 19th centuries, like, that knight in that armor on a white horse coming to save the woman who's distressed or whatever. It's just, and then you take them away to this castle or whatever, the savior, this stuff. But Islamic concept is very enabling. It's a concept of two equals working together, building something, the family unit. And it's an everyday thing, because again, the mundane of the everyday is quite ordinary, isn't it? So you're doing, like you said, the nappies or cooking or dishes or whatever. So we have to give different meaning, rather than thinking romance will only happen when somebody brings you flowers or chocolates or something like that. The diamonds is another thing, isn't it? Around with Valentine's Day, people make so much money. And I have a funny story to share. Some years ago, my husband bought me, my daughter and my husband, actually, I don't know, a special occasion. I can't remember exactly what it was. They bought me a ring, and which I said, I went back and I bought a Dyson for myself. I said, I don't want the ring. My Dyson needed upgrading. So, I don't know how that sounds, Kathleen, but I just feel that we don't need to give material so importance, actions, and that's the love language, isn't it? Acts of service. So the Islamic concept is the concept of service, khidma. So people are in service of each other, and such a beautiful concept that the husband is in service of the wife and the wife is in service of the husband. And it's not just one or the other, both, the whole household contributes and complements. So I think the Islamic concept is very wholesome, and it's not in extreme, and nobody's saving anybody, really. People are doing their roles, because the Islamic understanding of us as people is that every single day we have different roles. So our role as spouses, and then our roles as parents or neighbors or whatever, they all are really important, and we do them for the sake of Allah. So the romantic notion is that the spouse or the beloved is in the center of the universe. For us, that doesn't work as Muslims. We can only put Allah in the center of our life, really. And it becomes very, like I said, initially, this whole concept of romanticism from poets like Keats and all those people is very consuming, and it's almost makes you ill. So I don't want to be in a relationship where I have to be feeling ill and unwell. What do you think?
Definitely. I mean, we want to be in a relationship that we're enjoying, that we're both contributing to, and that and I think also gaining rewards from. So having that intention of what we're doing, that we're going to be gaining rewards, inshallah, that because this life we know is very transient. And we've had disasters. Look, last week of what happened in Turkey and Syria. It came out of the blue. Millions of people, or thousands of people, I should say, passed away, unfortunately, and more thousands very seriously injured. Anything could happen, any of us at any time. And that should have been a kind of an eye opener, a shake to us all. Even the word zilzal, actually, the earthquake, it's in the Quran. It is, and you can feel it when you're saying it. It's kind of a shaky word that is like to shake you up, to give you that, look at what can happen to you any minute. And we need to be prepared for our hereafter and how to prepare for that. Excuse me. So I think we all need to look at that and how we can be prepared, how we can be better as couples. So, I'm wondering, what kind of messages can we give our couples on this day, or our married people that are listening in, to be able to be better spouses to one another, to be better parents to their children, or grandparents to their children, to be better siblings, to be better daughters and sons if they have parents. This is the message I'm wondering that we could look at today, and how could we be better at doing that? What do you think?
I think that's a really, really good point. And we shouldn't really, when we think about love, I feel that we have to look at love in different dimensions and different roles that we have. So whether it's our love towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's creation, our environment, plants, people, all sorts, really, because it's a transactional thing, isn't it? But then the important thing is that it cannot be, unless we focus on ourselves as to what do I need to do differently, what am I going to give rather than what am I going to receive. Again, this material whole thing is about what is somebody going to give me, and I come at the receiving end. So any relationship where we constantly at the receiving end means that there's no inner agency, and I'm not really my best version. So it's not about what am I bringing to you, it's what are you going to give me. So the balance goes away. So in all our relationships, when we focus on what can I do to be my better version, then it's uplifting and motivating, isn't it? What can I do today to please my mom or my sister? And the minute we start taking responsibility and with different ideas, it does something amazing to our brain chemistry. And it's very enabling. It's very uplifting. That, okay, I'm going to make a quick cup of tea before I go to work and just give somebody that break, a quick, tea in bed before whatever, any nice thing. And that's the concept again about service, isn't it? And little things, it really doesn't take a lot. It's just being attentive, open and curious, and learning about the other, what makes the other person happy. So, and that's about attention and being quite being focused on the other person rather thinking what's the prevailing trend really. And that's a problem when one size fits all. Then it becomes a problem. Some people are not about roses and chocolates. They're more about a home cooked meal, for instance. Really, if that's their preference, some people don't like going to the restaurants, and that's fine as well, isn't it? So it becomes problematic when we are very narrow in our approach. So and with each of our relationship, as you said, being Allah focused, is that every single interaction during the day, we know that it's a transaction not between those people, but it's Allah is the witness. So we are doing it for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's being more God conscious, I think. and knowing that the reward doesn't necessarily need to come from the other person. It becomes transaction. I give you something, why aren't you giving it back to me? But when we know, okay, fair enough, there's maybe a delay from receiving from this person, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instantly puts in our record anything good that we do. So we satiated, we know that we haven't gone without. And it's just kind of expanding that understanding as well.
So we have a lot of expanding to do now on this show, listeners. We're just coming into a commercial break. We're trying to get you to think about Valentine's Day and what are you going to do differently to appreciate the other person. So it's not about, as Abeda was saying, about receiving, it's about giving, it's about doing things together, it's about reflecting on yourself and how can I be better, how can we be better as a couple, how can we be better to our families, how can children be better to their parents. So all of this comes into to today. That is not just one day, it's going to continue hopefully for the rest of the days and the year as well. And we're going to come back and talk a bit more about that, about the other 364 days in the year, not just today after this commercial break. So do tune in to us after this commercial break, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Parenting Hour. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5 here in the West Midlands and 105.1 to our Luton, Milton Keynes, Peterborough listeners. Welcome to this evening show. If you're tuned in on the app, you could be anywhere in the country or even abroad. I hope you're enjoying the show on Valentine's Day, where we're talking about love, marriage, commitment, and we talked a lot about what it was before in the first half of the show about Valentine's Day and what was love. Now we want to go into what can I do? How can I change things? How can I make things better in this half of the show? And of course, I'm delighted to have Abeda Ahmad with us again, who is really giving us a lovely foundation and understanding of what is love. From her experience as a professional working in this field for many years, in her counselling, in her marriage workshops, in her pre-marriage workshops, mashallah. She has helped a lot of couples, and may Allah bless that and continue to help many couples, inshallah. Abeda, we were talking there, we dissected Valentine's Day a lot there before the first half of the show. Now, if we're moving on, and I know time goes very quickly for us, people think, okay, today is like a start. We have different milestones. Some people make a start in Ramadan. Some people make a fresh start in New Year. Some people like setting goals or making a start or changing something about themselves. They have people maybe do it on Fridays. We all reflect. We should be doing it every day, actually, but not everybody can do this every day. How do people people that listen to the show today and now say, I want to make a fresh start, I want to do something different, I want to be better, I want my relationship to be better, I want my marriage to be better?
Jazakallah khair, Kathleen. I think what we need to do possibly is kind of think about a holistic notion of love. So, and to save this whole thing, I think we need to bring in the Islamic understanding that love with responsibility, love with mercy, love with kindness, love with commitment, love with responsibility. So understanding that love on its own, it doesn't work. So what I mean by that is that we need something more mature, which is psychologically and spiritually informed, basically. So how does that work? So I suppose the way that works is that we start thinking about being our best version in our relationship. So from today, like you said, if we're starting from today, then it's about, okay, me as if you're looking at marriage, so me as a wife, what am I bringing to this relationship, as opposed to constantly, and that goes for both, obviously. Then the husband has to ask, what am I bringing? Because love is very important. Don't get me wrong. We need love, but we need love in small doses every single day. And what that we will look like is going to be very different. So we can maybe use some of the concepts that we get from the love languages. So Are we affirming and showing gratitude? So gratitude is one of those things that I think young people, especially in their relationships, are losing a lot of gratitude, because when you look at social media, for instance, you look at somebody's Instagram feed, and every single day, big flowers and candlelit dinners and this and that, whatnot. They look at that and then they feel really inferior, and they feel, my life is so boring and mundane. And then they show no gratitude. And as Muslims, we know that if there is lack of gratitude, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take away that blessing for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the more you give gratitude to me, the more I will increase that blessing. And we get trapped in that negative cycle. And our spouses as well, that if we don't show gratitude, they then stop. It's like children, isn't it, Kathleen? That if you want a behavior to increase, we give positive reinforcement. So I think it's really important that we think about improving our own self rather than constantly being on the receiving end and analyzing the other person's performance and kind of dismissing what they're doing as not good enough. Because this notion it's never ending, really. It starts from flowers to chocolates to diamonds to cars to this to that, but there's no end to it, because they have to sell more and more, isn't it? The commercial side is so big, the designer bags and whatnot. So I often say to couples that, in one of the homework tasks I would give is that this week you have to buy you have to give your spouse a gift that you are not allowed to buy from the shops. And that gives people a lot of room to be creative. I don't know. What do you think about that concept, Kathleen?
That sounds really, really nice concept. And as you're talking there, you got me thinking that we've just had this earthquake. I talked about it, the break there before the first half of the show, when we talked about the zilzal and in Turkey and Syria, and it's affected thousands of people. Maybe some people could give, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give a donation. I'm going to share it here. I'm going to give a donation to a charity, and I'm going to tell my husband I'm giving it on your behalf. So that, mashallah, so it's a affection of my love, but it is to help other people, indeed. So thank you, Abeda, for getting me thinking of that, because I wouldn't have thought about that except what you were talking about here about, and I don't usually share my own personal opinions of what I do on the radio, but I think this is something that people could do.
Amazing concept. Jazakallah khair. And that's sadaqah jariyah, isn't it? Doing something that has longevity rather than just something that you would do here and now, for instance, gratification. So for us, we have to look at the bigger purpose, and then kind of looking at people who are less privileged. That's just Jazakallah khair for sharing that. And I think that gives broader vision, and for relationships as well. If we are constantly consumed and focused on mundane, then if we don't have bigger purpose and meaning in life, then it becomes very monotonous, and spiritually we really feel empty if we're not really thinking about what's happening around us and living in bubbles. So I think this is indeed a time for reflection, and for us to include others and kind of think about what's happening. And that, again, that goes back to gratitude, that regardless of how difficult we think our situation is, we look at other people, subhanAllah, and we think we cannot be ungrateful for what we have. And if we constantly keep looking at people who have more than us, then it's a vicious cycle then, isn't it?
And definitely, indeed, and we should be there trying to, as you say, bring in Allah into our relationships, whether it is a couple or a family here, and maybe thinking about how we can do that differently. So if we were listening to the show this evening and you're a married couple, and maybe you've had a little bit of friction kind of in the last few weeks, and here's a point that you think, okay, I can start doing something different from today. I can start thinking about how my spouse in a different way, and I want to change things. Where would we start? What was the first things that we should be doing to start to make things better?
I think the first thing is kind of thinking about our own mindset, because when we are in a mindset where we're just focusing on the negatives, then we just, from there on, we are very reactive, and we're not proactive then. Now, if we're thinking about making change, then it's about focusing on what do we already have and what do we need to now build on. Now, when we talk about in our courses, Kathleen, we talk about mainly three things. We say that we need commitment, then we need the emotional connection, and then we need physical connection. So most Muslim couples, they have the commitment anyway, because they have the nikah in the sight of Allah, and then they have the other two things that they need to work on. So the emotional connection and then the physical connection. So the emotional connection is about paying attention and showing mercy, basically. Going back to the first concept where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says love and mercy. So when people get stuck in a rut, people are exhausted and tired, and there's lack of gratitude because we have so many different hats that we wear throughout the different roles. And the role that gets kind of bundled away very quickly is being a spouse, and that this romantic side kind of goes away because other people and other relationships, they need us more. Like if somebody is raising young children, their mommy and daddy, they're doing all that, and there's no time for each other. So if we want to improve, I think the emotional connection, and it takes little things. You gave such a beautiful example of notes or whatever. And I suppose when there is negativity settled in, people begrudge the other person. They don't want to let go of the negativity, and they don't want to say nice things to other people. They just say, no, they don't deserve niceness from me. But I think letting go. So the resetting is very important. So resetting means that you say you decide to park. And I'm not talking about parking, God forbid, violent relationships or abuse or minimizing any of that. Obviously, God forbid, if somebody is in an unsafe situation, then I'm not saying that we minimize that. None of that. What I'm saying is that if it's like everyday stuff, and it happens a lot, like this concept of taking each other for granted. Like one person is doing everything. They're cooking, they're cleaning, they're loading, unloading the dishwasher. They're doing everything. And one person is just doing their own thing. So kind of putting a fresh pair of eyes and say, how can I be more helpful to this other person, and take some of their workload from them. Again, it's a very Islamic concept. Prophet ﷺ used to come home from all his busy work and get on with whatever was the domestic stuff, really. So it's a one concept, but it's a very Islamic concept, alhamdulillah. So this concept of fair play, that you take on whatever is there to be done, really, and not begrudge the other person, because you're working as a team. So you're complementing each other, not competing against. There's no point scoring, really. So I think the mindset needs to shift, that for the sake of Allah, you want to help the other person and show compassion and kindness. I think that would be a good start, Kathleen.
Great. That's compassion, kindness, understand. You're talking about being there, really, physically, emotionally aware, alert, and being there as a person, not like a robot. Because sometimes we now is so much, we've got so much to help us that we tend to just switch on this, switch on that, go to the phone when we want something, look up things, that we do things like robots rather than there looking at the person, communicating to the person, smiling with the person, having a joke together. That can be so much of that romance as well, having a dance around the kitchen, as you would do, with a child, if you wanted to cheer them up a little bit, give them a swing around the kitchen or something like this. It's the same. There's nothing preventing us from doing this with our spouses.
Absolutely. And I think that's, again, that's so true, that the more we bring this into our everyday life, rather than making it exclusive for that Thursday night or that date night or whatever, the more it becomes an everyday thing, the more we become able to do it, because we shy away. We think, oh no, that was stuff we used to do in the first year of the relationship. And we need to be so free, and we don't then take little opportunities of injecting this positivity. Again, one of the prophetic guidances and in terms of the prophetic practices. Prophet ﷺ used to, when he used to come home, he used to come and kiss his wife. So when he used to leave the house, he would kiss his wives. And that in itself as an action is so beautiful, because it takes 2 seconds, but it shows attention, it shows respect, it shows gratitude, it shows so many warm and lovely things, really. So, and another thing that we know that the Prophet ﷺ used to do is when he would pick up the cup and he would find the place where Aisha radiallahu anhu would have taken a sip from, and his lips would touch the same place. And that's, again, it just shows attention and care and so many lovely things which can be done in 1 second. So you don't need to go to a designer shop to show somebody that you love them. And these things are free, accessible, always available at your disposal. But like you said, you need to have the intention and the headspace, because people are so consumed, and then we take others for granted as well. So once you've conquered something, you found your love, and then they're with you, and then you start taking them for granted. I think that becomes a problem, isn't it, as well? When you stop investing in the other person. We all need investment, don't we?
We all need investment, and we all need that as a continuous thing. And what I'm smiling at your example of the designer shop, because I know it's nice having a nice garment, and sometimes we need something for a special occasion. But when we spend more on that special occasion garment, we tend to wear it less. And the things that we wear every day are not that expensive. So it's in a way, it's like this. It's what we should be doing every day. It doesn't cost money, and we shouldn't be investing in just that one thing that is hung up in the wardrobe that we may wear once every 3-4 years, if at that. Because I know a lot of people spend money maybe for something special for a wedding, but then wouldn't wear it again, because so many people have seen them in that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just kind of trying to, well, there may be some things wrong with it, indeed, if you spend, depending how much you spend on it. But I'm not saying that you shouldn't be dressed up for a special occasion, but it is, if you're comparing it, we should be investing in the things that we want to wear more, or do we want to give more, if you're putting an analogy there, or we want to be seen more with. So when we are trying to give, or we should be as the same ourselves, practicing that ourselves and seeing in it. So we should have that expression ourselves, that we are smiling, that we are inviting, that we are open. So looking at ourselves as well, that we are not the one that repels that person from coming forward because we have an angry face on us, or we're not in a good place, or maybe some people may be afraid that this might lead to something that they don't have time for, or that they don't want to do now. So there's lots of things around that.
That's so important. I think that's such a valid point, and it comes across so many times in the work that we do, that we all, as people, we all have our personal baggage, our emotional baggage, our stuff, our internal stuff that is going within us, and then that is what we project. So oftentimes what we are bringing is what we are attracting as well. So positivity, as we say, the law of attraction is that positivity attracts positivity. And again, I'm not, please, I have to say this again and again, that I'm not talking about relationships which are strained from because of domestic violence or abuse. I'm not saying that we become relentlessly positive in abuse or whatever. And that's about boundaries, and that's about looking after ourselves. But generally, in everyday relationships, especially in marriages, it becomes a problem that we don't really focus on what are we going to change. So you're absolutely right that if I'm constantly exhausted because I don't have good boundaries, where I know that I need to look after myself as well. So if I'm spreading myself so thinly and looking after not putting myself anywhere where I have half an hour to look after myself, then I'm going to be bitter and resentful and mean and groggy to my spouse who comes home and says, but then that's my responsibility, recognizing that I, as an adult, have responsibility And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects me to look after myself physically, spiritually, mentally, socially. And that's, as a person, my responsibility. And that's a very enabling concept. And the problem with love in that sense is that the whole savior thing, that somebody else should know everything about me. They should know how I'm feeling, and they should then look after me in that sense, is that we become quite like they have to save us, like somebody else is up there, I'm down there. And taking responsibility and knowing what's going on for me and working on myself is the only way we can bring some balance and sustainability in a relationship. I believe that.
Definitely. So we have about another 5 minutes left in the show or thereabouts. What tips can we give people this evening to have a better evening, to start having a better marriage, a better year? You know, they want to use this as a milestone and maybe measure between this year and next year, which is fine. They can use it as a day for that. What tips can we give to help people and support people in this evening that are listening to the show, that really want to kind of do something to show they are grateful, to show their love?
So I suppose the key thing, as we keep going around talking about gratitude, is starting by appreciating what we have. So surrendering to what we have. And this concept is so beautiful, that we accept the person for who they are, rather than constantly thinking, if only they were a little bit of that, then they would be fulfilling and wholesome. And once we surrender to the person's personality, because people are different in terms of their cultures or whatever, accepting them and then doing little things every day, showing consistency. So if we start kissing our spouses goodbye before leaving the house, then we make sure that we do that every single day with consistency. Even if we're angry, we don't become hot and cold and punish the other person by withholding. We can hold on to our argument, but then we can still do the action because we commit to that. And that is a beautiful concept, that we don't really do something and then stop doing it and then do it the next month or whatever. So consistency of small actions, and also paying attention and switching off the social media, because I think that's the biggest issue that we have in this day and age, which takes away gratitude and positivity. So not comparing our marriage to anybody else's marriage, because everybody is different. And the reality is that everybody has their own challenges and their own difficulties, which we don't see on social media. And recognizing that, alhamdulillah, you know, whatever we have is enough and we can build on it. Baby steps in the right direction, inshallah.
MashaAllah, there's a lot of good tips there, MashaAllah, for people that want to make changes and do something. What is your impression then of somebody that actually has gone to that bother and has gone and bought the bouquet of flowers and the chocolates, and they're listening to us on the way home in the car, and there they have done this?
Well, good for them, alhamdulillah. I don't think there's anything wrong. I mean, I wish we were on TV. I could have shown you. I have lots of roses in my office today, and that's fine. We all love beautiful things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves beautiful things. He made these flowers, so there's no problem with that. And definitely go ahead and give your wife or your spouse the flowers or the chocolates, but don't make it exclusive to one day. And embed a habit. So I say to people, when you go on to Tesco or Lidl or whatever, if you have money, buy a bunch for £2-3 and make it a regular thing, because if you can afford, it's not mandatory, but it doesn't need to be exclusive for Valentine's Day. But what we can do with flowers and chocolates is add on other things, like acts of service, like saying nice things, by showing gratitude or spending quality time or giving that person that attention. So I think it's about being wholesome, rather than just being commercial about expressing love.
Great, mashallah. And maybe our listeners might like to phone in and leave some suggestions of what they have done to show gratitude, to show love, whether you're a man or a woman. Indeed, and what would you like? What would be your daily intake of that or demonstration of love to you?
So can I give you two sweet examples that two of my clients gave in the last couple of weeks? So one said that their husband warms their side of the bed for them before they come into the bed, so then they move over. And I thought that was such a sweet thing, to warm somebody's side of the bed for them. How thoughtful. And then somebody else said that they would, before they come home, their wife will put their slippers under the radiator just to make them a bit warm for them to come and slip into. And again, that takes 2 seconds, but it's about focus and attention. So I think little things are the most beautiful things in life. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's very inspirational.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, that's lovely inspiration. And any other personal tip you'd like to leave with us before we end this evening's show?
Gratitude, saying nice things and romantic things. The Prophet ﷺ used to say lovely romantic things. It's about showing gratitude, saying things like, I'm so blessed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me with you. And saying those nice things often, because when we are quick to complain, because every day there's so many things that are going wrong, but then taking a step back and also thanking the person for being there and showing gratitude. I think gratitude definitely is a big fun for me personally.
MashaAllah. Jazakallah khairan, Abeda. You're full of inspiration, MashaAllah. We really appreciate you coming on the show and helping and supporting all the listeners, no matter what gender they are, to be better people themselves, to be better spouses, to be better fathers, mothers, to be better daughters or sons. Whatever it is, inshallah, that we are helping and supporting each other and sharing ideas here. And I love the radiator little tip and heating up the bed. Indeed, it's lovely, these little messages that we can do for one another, and showing gratitude that for the little things, as you said, for, doing the ironing or doing the tidying up the shoes, or whatever it is, maybe making that cup of tea for somebody that has had a hard day. So inshallah, a lot of tips here, and I hope our couples will take on this on board indeed, and every day will be a Valentine's Day for our couples listening into us this evening, inshallah. May Allah bless you and reward you all, inshallah. Until next week, listeners, keep us in your du'as as well, and keep all the people that have suffered and have lost life in your du'as, please, and the families, etc., in your du'as, inshallah. And may Allah help everybody that is suffering at the moment and ease their burdens. Ameen.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.